Favorite guest is joining me in the studio live with you this morning. She's a former president of the Guild Law School, publisher and co-founder, editor of the LA Progressive. She used to be a rocket scientist while she was part of NASA's JPL lab, where she managed resources for projects like Genesis and Mars Pathfinder. We got to do that show one day. She sits on several boards, including a board of directors for the ACLU and editorial board of theblackcommentator.com. Sharon Kyle, good morning.
Good morning, Dominique. It's such a pleasure to be here. I love spending time with you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I love spending time with you, and I appreciate you making the trek to be here live and in person.
No problem.
Now, for those of us, you who call yourself progressive, who have not yet subscribed to the LA Progressive, now's the time to do it. Stop BSing and sign up. It's kind of by donation, right?
Right. So we don't have a paywall that stops anyone from reading. Anyone can read, but we just hope that people who are reading would be willing to contribute a little bit, because it takes a whole lot of time to put this. This is a daily publication, and my husband and I publish and edit it every day, and we have done so for 19 years.
Daily publication is more than a notion. And you've got progressive viewpoints from all over the country, and and also your own, obviously. And I think it's important because a lot of people running around now calling themselves progressives and even calling themselves democratic socialists. But do the policies match the labels? And if you're not really clear on what progressive is, I think LA Progressive and what you've been doing makes it very clear.
Well, I hope so. That's what we're trying to accomplish. It really started out with me just basically trying to understand how it is that we have such divides. We live in the most racially, ethnically, there's so much diversity in this country, and yet we don't really have a language that explains our diversity. We don't have a language where we can talk to each other and understand each other. So it started out when I first started, my husband and I first started the LA Progressive. At the time, I was actually working at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And after working there for a while, I started to keep notes on behaviors that I witnessed, that I characterize and others have characterized as microaggressive or silent racism, unconscious bias, implicit bias. There's a project, or at least there was a project at Harvard University called Project Implicit, and it attempts to help people to identify their biases that they're unaware of. And so it was me being immersed in, at the time that I began working there back in 1988, so I was there for 23 years, the population of the laboratory, which is in Pasadena. For those of you who don't know where it is, NASA has NASA centers all over the country, but the biggest one in Southern California is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And at the time, they had anywhere between 8,500 or about 8,500 people. Excuse me. And 90% of them were white. And so it was my first time really being immersed so completely in an environment where there were so few people like me. And this is where I would see these behaviors. And then I was already married to a white man, and I was living in a white neighborhood and going to a white church. And all of this was kind of new to me because I had been married before. And my first husband is black, and my children are black. And I really began to notice.
And you are black.
And, right, that's right.
This
I'm black.
is radio, so
part.
yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm black.
You're not streaming on YouTube, yeah. So,
right. So it was when I just started to pay attention, write notes, and my notes became 500 pages. And that was sort of the beginnings of the LA Progressive.
wow.
And my objective was
500 pages of microaggressions
Yeah,
is wild, but
Yeah.
not surprising.
No. I mean, when you're in this environment daily. And so my goal was to create a politically progressive digital magazine that while it did not target the black community, that was not the demographic that we're after. The demographic we're after is the progressive community, and it's where you'll find a lot of people who are non-black who feel that they are open to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but they have so many blind spots. And so this article that I wrote that we're going to be talking about,
Yeah, I mean, blind spots is a great way of putting it. Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that you'll hear me sort of complain about or talk about, it's a bit of a pet peeve in terms of, I focus it on the press, but your article expands it out into everything, is this idea, mainstream news organizations say that they are unbiased. They say that they are objective. But objective to them means that the default is whiteness.
That's right.
Objective to them means white, male, middle class or upper middle class perspective. That's supposed to be subjective. And so I always say, no, you're not. You're not objective. You are subjective. You're not. We can only see the world through our own eyes, and I believe we can be fair, but I don't believe that there is any such thing as true objectivity.
I don't think so either.
And so in that scenario, the default is white, but it's unspoken. And to me, that's kind of what you're writing about here.
It's exactly what I'm writing about, because I agree with you. It's impossible. I don't think it's possible for any human being to be 100% objective in anything that they're writing. You choose what to include in an article. You choose what to not include. You're writing always from a particular viewpoint. And what I think is important to do is to be aware of that,
right,
to state that openly.
To admit it, which they don't do.
They don't, because so many of them are completely unaware. And so this piece that I wrote,
that's true.
And it's like I saw this quote that says, I don't know who discovered water, but it certainly wasn't a fish. And I mean, they really don't know.
Right. They don't know what they don't know.
Yeah,
and that sounds goofy, but it's so well said. And I want to talk about, the way, because the ways that you have discussed it here, I'm hoping, because I know you have people of all different backgrounds that read the LA Progressive, that maybe it can make some of these folks aware of these blind spots.
Well, I believe that it can, but it's not just me writing this. I'm witnessing, especially since the murder of George Floyd. Shortly after the murder of George Floyd, I was introduced to an organization called Coming to the Table. And Coming to the Table, for those of you who aren't aware of it, is an organization that is comprised of the descendants of enslavers and the descendants of the enslaved, the formerly enslaved. We come together once a month, and we work toward racial healing and making the connection between what we see in contemporary America and how what's going on in contemporary America is a legacy of what happened in America, both to white, black, and other non-white people who are not black. And my husband, Dick, who is white, is also a part of this organization. The organization is mostly, it's a national organization, and there are chapters all over the country. But I would say it's probably 60 to 70% white.
Wow.
So it's been a really eye-opening experience, because there are people who have to recognize that what we see going on in this country is a legacy of our history, and there haven't been as many changes as we thought. When Dick and I first got married 23 years ago, we had an argument. It was an ongoing argument. And people who have been married for a long time, they'll know that there tends to be a recurrence of the same argument over and over again. And with us, the argument was that I maintained that this country has not grown as much as people think. People reflect back on the civil rights movement, the civil rights era, and say, oh, we've made so much progress. Look what happened in the civil rights era. Well, I'm of the generation that should have been the beneficiary of the civil rights movement. I was a child in the 60s. So by the time I came of age in the early 80s, late 70s, ready to graduate and get a job, I didn't see where my life was measurably different than my mom's. So that was an argument that we used to have. We no longer have it.
Yeah, well, I can imagine why. We're talking with Sharon Kyle. She is the editor of the LA Progressive, laprogressive.com. Go find out. Go sign up. Go subscribe. We're going to continue this conversation. It is an important conversation about how we normalize whiteness.
Yeah.
We'll continue when we come forward, only on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominic DePrima when we come forward.
It's game day. Are your moderate to severe Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms keeping you from the action? Skyrizi, risankizumab Riza, could help you get back to the game. Skyrizi is proven to help people feel significant symptom relief, achieve remission, and visibly improve damage of the intestinal lining. Skyrizi is a prescription injection medicine for adults. Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions, increased infections, or lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor about any flu-like symptoms or vaccines. Liver problems leading to hospitalization may occur when treated for Crohn's or ulcerative colitis.
Control is everything to me.
Ask your doctor about Skyrizi, the #1 prescribed biologic in Crohn's and ulcerative colitis combined. Learn more at skyrizi.com or 1-866-SKYRIZI.
You ready?
Drop it. 2 shows, 1 Friday. All Amanda Seals. What's up, y'all? Catch me here on KBLA Talk 1580, first from noon to 2 p.m. And if you miss me, I'm back 4 to 6 p.m. See, this is where the conversation gets real. Ooh, and it gets good. So don't miss it. Fridays only on KBLA Talk 1580.
This November, you'll decide who leads California. So shouldn't you hear directly from the people asking for your vote? Join us for California Voices, a political town hall and ballot forum, Saturday, October 3rd, 2026. Meet candidates running for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and other major statewide and local offices, including mayor of Los Angeles, city attorney, and LA County sheriff. Get clear, nonpartisan breakdowns of the propositions on your November ballot, both sides, no spin. And ask your questions directly, in real conversation, face to face. California Voices is brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the Empowerment Congress, giving you the information you need before you vote. Mark your calendar, Saturday, October 3rd, 2026, California Voices. Follow KBLA 1580 for details and download the KBLA 1580 app. Your vote, your voice. Be there.
The conversation continues right now with Dominic DePrima on First Things First.
You know, Sharon Kyle is with me. She's the editor-in-chief at the LA Progressive. What you're writing about here is something that I think we're all aware of, but it's a different kind of quiet part out loud, because it is the pervasiveness of the racial model in unspoken ways.
Absolutely. And it's because it is so pervasively unspoken, it's difficult to find the words. So I wrote this article, I sent it to you and asked you to read it, and I wanted to know if my message came through. And you said that it did. So let me just tell the audience a little bit about it. The LA Progressive is published daily, and the vast majority of the writers who contribute their writings to the LA Progressive are white. They're all progressive. The vast majority are white. A large percentage of them are white men. And this article was written by a man who is a dear friend. In fact, he was living in Portugal up until about a year ago, and Dick and I went to Portugal, and we spent time with him there. We have been friends with him for 15 years. So he contributes all of the time. He's a very kind, gentle soul. And so I'm going to give you an excerpt from this piece that he wrote. He says, a neighbor in Tucson reads the news over coffee. ICE killed another human being. The war that is not a war, starting again with bombings and a naval blockade. Report is subpoenaed for reporting evidence in the killings of 2 Americans by federal agents, handed over at last after months of stonewalling, all in the same news scroll. She feels anger and frustration at the unnecessary deaths, suffering, and cruelty. It is momentary, though, a flicker. Then she puts her iPhone down because the waffles are done. She needs to get to work on time and first must drive her daughter to school. She's not a bad person. She was at the No Kings March. She gives what she can. She has a Be Kind sticker on the car. She will think about the man ICE killed again tonight for a moment before sleep. She is like most of us. And when I read that, as I was editing it, my heart sank. I hear this kind of stuff all of the time, and so many people would be completely oblivious as to why this writing would make my heart sink.
Yeah.
And it made my heart sink because he characterized her as she is like most of us. And it's a lengthy piece. And he goes on to talk about this woman who is progressive, but her life continues on. And she can go ahead about her day, taking her kids to school, being engaged with whatever she's engaged with, because this doesn't touch her. But it touches me. You know, it touches me in ways that says, oh, this article doesn't see me as the reader. When he says she is like most of us, what he's talking about is us white people. Us people who are somewhat removed from the dangers of having interactions with law enforcement, the dangers of losing the right to vote, from having your experiencing discrimination in employment and housing, and all of the things that we are subjected to on a regular basis, because he doesn't name whiteness in his article. It's a lengthy article, and throughout the article he speaks of this woman in Tucson, but he never mentions her race, as if it is not relevant. But in fact, it is central. It is the thing that protects her. And when my husband and I got married, one thing I noticed by being around him, his family, in his world, was that race was always unnamed until you talked about non-white people. And then race comes up. So if you're speaking of a black person, or you're speaking of a person who is ethnically different than a white American, like a Latina, a Latino, or if you're speaking of an Asian American, then these people are racialized, or the ethnicity comes to the fore, even when it's not relevant for the story. But when you're speaking of white people, there's no mention.
Right, which is why I say that it's an example of how white is considered the default. It is the default, and it's the default to such an extent that we're not even allowed to mention it. And I love how you articulate that in this article. When you say whiteness had simply been left unnamed, but treated as if the white experience is sufficiently universal to speak for all people. The accusation, I'm reading from Sharon right now, the accusation that black people are making everything about race protects that arrangement. It allows racial exclusion to remain invisible while portraying the act of naming it as divisive.
That's right. The act of naming it is problematic, but the act of doing it is fine. So as I was reading this article, I felt like there were 2 injuries. One is the racial exclusion through false universality. And the false universality is this notion that whiteness is the generic people. So I had a white girlfriend she was my friend. But you see, these kinds of inabilities to speak from the same hymn book, to sing from the same hymn book, this creates division. So she was a friend. She is a friend. She was white, and she was saying, you're lucky. You're exotic. You have something special. She says, I'm just Wonder Bread. Like, I'm just the generic human.
I'm the default.
Yeah, She doesn't see. She's saying she's the default and that she doesn't have anything that is unique to me. So there's that kind
When in
of...
fact, I mean, genetically, scientifically, you're the default. Scientifically, all
Right.
life is, springs
stems
from
from-
Africa.
that's
So
right.
actually, if you're going on science, we would be the default.
That's right. That's right. And then the other part that really is upsetting is that what this woman is troubled by, but can easily put it down and go to sleep, she's troubled by racialized violence and unequal vulnerabilities that exist all over society, but not for her. And so the fact that she's protected from it is central to the story. The fact that she's white is central to the story. But again, it remains unnamed. And so it becomes a racial erasure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that one phrase you just said, racial exclusion through false universality.
Yes.
I need a T-shirt. I need that quote, because what you've done is you've named something that is so frustrating, but a lot of us don't quite know how to put our finger on it.
Yeah, and it's taken me a long time. I was telling you that, I collected all of these microaggressions, the unintentional slights, and they really weren't intentional. But what would always occur to me was this person is making a statement that is revealing to me their obliviousness to their position of advantage over me. And this person is a superior in terms of employment. They had the power to hire, to fire, to promote, and they are clueless about their biases. And there was a time when the institution would adopt various forms of diversity training. And I remember one time in this organization of over 8,000 people, they chose 2 white men, one of them, by the way, which was from South Africa, to lead this effort to be the diversity training managers. And I thought, this is hopeless.
Yeah, well, I mean, I long ago worked at well, I don't have time because we're about to go into news, traffic, and sport. I worked at a radio station where I brought in some folks to do diversity training, and it almost caused a riot because one of the people I brought in was white, but he was more along the Tim Wise version of white. And the folks they were so angry, you're telling me to feel guilty for being white. No, we just want you, can you at least acknowledge it? 800-920-1580 if you want to weigh in. Sharon Kyle is here. We'll continue the conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Protests continue in Madison, Wisconsin after a police shooting captured on viral video. Authorities say the suspect was armed with a knife, but demonstrators are demanding the officer be arrested. Rapper Pooh Shiesty will remain behind bars after a federal judge denied his latest request for a bond. Pooh Shiesty and several co-defendants are accused of kidnapping and conspiracy after allegedly holding Gucci Mane and members of his team at gunpoint. His trial is scheduled for February. And the World Series champion LA Dodgers are visiting the White House today to be honored by President Trump. Not every player is expected to attend, with star shortstop Mookie Betts saying he'll likely miss the event. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
July is Disability Pride Month, a time to celebrate identity, individuality, and inclusion. Pride means showing up as your full, authentic self without apology. Let's celebrate what makes every one of us unique. Easter Seals Disability Services honors Disability Pride Month. Learn more at socal.easterseals.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Today was Football Media Day for the SWAC and MEAC, the top 2 HBCU athletic conferences in the country. Media members covering both conferences gave their predictions on which teams will be top contenders for the conference title. In the MEAC, South Carolina State was voted to repeat as champion for the third straight year. South Carolina State has won the last 2 HBCU national titles. In the SWAC, Prairie View A&M and Alabama State got the most votes to finish first in their division. Prairie View is in the SWAC West. Alabama State is in the East. Prairie View is coming off an 81 season in the SWAC. They lost to South Carolina State last year in the HBCU National Championship game. A date to put on your calendar for next year, August 27, 2027. That's the date for the HBCU Battle of the Bands at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, home of the NFL Dallas Cowboys. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Some things can steal your sunshine. Ugh, I just got my hair done.
Sorry, the cooler's broken. Anyone see my flip-flops? Anyone?
But COVID-19 can steal a lot more.
I just took a COVID test. Ugh.
Prescription medications for COVID exist. If you test positive this summer, ask your doctor if they're right for you. Visit PfizerForAll.com/COVID-19 to learn more. Sponsored by Pfizer.
This is the story of the one who keeps multiple buildings running smoothly day after day. Plumbing that flows, HVAC that hums, cleaning supplies that keep surfaces sparkling. That's why she counts on Grainger. With easy reordering online and 24/7 support, Grainger helps her keep the products she needs on hand. So shelves stay stocked and buildings stay ready. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Oh no.
Straight the roof down.
I don't have time. Please, God, save us. Save our house. Please, God, please.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we haven't forgotten what happened Tuesday, January 7th, 2025.
The trauma, processing the loss of our home. How do we address the compounding effect of the fire now more than 18 months later? I noticed one of my 3 children engaged in self-harm who hasn't been able to articulate the challenges that they've had since the fire. And 4 out of the 5 folks in our household are in therapy. 1 is not. And the one that's not is the one who I noticed with some marks on their person. This isn't okay. You need to talk to someone.
Black historical memory keeps alive the stories and struggles of everyday people and communities. Black historical memory preserves truths that others attempt to erase, minimize, or distort. Black historical memory prevents history from repeating its worst chapters. At KBLA Talk 1580, we will never forget. Tune into Conversation Live, Altadena Rising with James Farr, weekends on KBLA Talk 1580. 1580.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
Welcome back indeed. We're so glad you're here. Sharon Kyle is also here. LA Progressive is her publication. And I recommend it because it'll give you a nice cross-section of different thinkers, different writers on with progressive thought and ideas. And it's very, very, very stimulating, keep you smart. Like Sharon. So kind of we're no, well, okay, but it's also true. So we're kind of unpacking this article, and I really will do a whole show on an article, but this article is unmasking a persistent viewpoint, a persistent structure in this country that goes unspoken, as you've said. And you give the example in your article about the Miss America pageant. And I think it's a good illustration of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I wanted to bring in the Miss America pageant because it's benign. There's no emotional sting except for maybe from feminists. But in terms of race,
Right.
there's no real emotional sting. So I talk about the fact that I'm from basically a female family, and I was raised as a child in the 60s. And every year we looked forward to seeing the Miss America pageant. Now, the Miss America pageant, I'm born and raised in New York. The Miss America pageant was conducted in New Jersey. So it was nearby, and I actually had family members that lived in the area where the pageant occurred every year. And so we were always looking forward to it. And we watched, even though the pageant had never crowned a black woman. Throughout the 60s, it never even permitted a black woman to compete on its national stage. Now, this was a rule, but it wasn't openly stated. Like much of this unnamed whiteness, no one talked about it. Nevertheless, although only white people, and not only were black people excluded, other races were excluded as well. But nevertheless, it was called the Miss America pageant because the Miss America pageant was sufficient. Being white was sufficient to represent all American women. So if the contestants were presented as representatives of all American women, they were just simply women. They were not called white women. They were called women. And it was understood that their brand of womanhood was not really being racially exclusive. They were just being universal women. Then in 1968, black organizers responded by creating the Miss Black America contest, and something really revealing happened. The original pageant, despite its entirely white history, like dating back from 1921 when it first started, up to it was 1983-84 when Vanessa Williams won. So for 60 years,
She was the first one.
She was the
first black woman to win. Yeah.
that's right. She was the first black woman in 1983, I think it was. But anyway, when the Miss Black America pageant became a thing, there was so much opposition. The racial act was supposedly not excluding black women. That wasn't the racial act. The racial act was naming the exclusion. So it became problematic that someone brought this issue out and had the nerve to have a Black America contest, Miss Black America contest, where race was named. So the whole way that we've maintained this racial hierarchy, this racial caste system, was by not speaking it, not saying it, and by promoting the idea that whiteness was universal enough to be representative of all Americans. And I like to use this story because I hope that it makes sense to people.
Yeah, I mean it's a really good example of white being the default. And there's some interesting comments in the chat. We'll get to those, but I liken it to this: when white folks say you're playing the race card, and my response to that is those are the only cards where we get dealt. We get dealt all spades, and then you get mad at us for playing the race card. Those are the only cards we got, homie. But I think the way you have stated is actually much more kind of intellectually enlightening. So how would you respond in this context to someone saying you're playing the race card?
Well, I'll tell you what my experience was like when I first married my husband. We'd be in a social setting at a cocktail party, mostly with white people, and the conversation would just be all over the map. We'd talk about politics, we'd talk about social conditions, all kinds of things.
Right, because you guys are both progressives.
We're both progressives, and we'd be in progressive environments. But when the topic turned to race, everyone in the room would look at me. And it happened so often that my husband came. First, he didn't notice it. But it happened so often, he began to see it. And he says, "What's up with that?" I said, "Well, don't you see? I'm the only one in the room who belongs to a race." Everyone else thinks that race is somebody else's thing. They don't have a race. I said, "Don't you realize you don't have a race? Race is me." And that's the thing that it's so subtle, but that's the thing that I began to see.
So what you're telling me is that white folks don't think they have a race?
They don't racialize themselves. They don't see themselves as a race. There's a wonderful author. Her name is Tandika. It's spelled Than, D as in David, E-K-A. And she's a sociologist, a psychologist, I think. And she writes about, the name of her book is Learning to be White.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that she talks about is the de-racialization of whiteness. So she has these exercises in the book to help white people to become connected to their whiteness, to see their whiteness as non-white people see them. And she says, what I want you to do for a week, when you introduce your friend, when you think of a friend, you'll think of your black friend named Sally, or your Asian AAPI friend named Theodore, or just think of your white friend named James and call him. This is my white friend James. This is my white sister Eugenia. Call whiteness what it is instead of remaining in the unnamed position, and see how that shifts your understanding of whiteness.
Yeah, that's probably a really revealing exercise. We on our news here sometimes they like to say, the man, the lawmaker, who is black, and I just can't imagine them going, the lawmaker, who is white. But I'd love to see them try it for a week or so. Yogi Fish says, black is beautiful, God said so. White is beautiful, God said so. Why did she marry a white man if she felt so oppressed by white society?
Okay, so it's interesting that the question asks if I felt so oppressed by white society. I really have not, I don't think, brought up the word oppressed and me feeling oppressed. But it is a good question, and it's a legitimate question. I was teaching. I used to be a law professor, and I was teaching, and my husband was at the school, and he came into my classroom, and the students didn't know him. And then I introduced him as my husband, and when he left the classroom, one of my students said, "You're married to a white man?" They were shocked, and I said, "Why are you shocked?" They said, "Well, because you're so vocal about your blackness." And so when I married my husband, we've been together now for 23 years, I actually was not as racially aware as I am now. In fact, it was being married to him that helped me to see much of what I see today. Much of what I saw before I married him, I was seeing from the outside. Now I'm seeing it from the inside.
Right, because your first husband was
My
black,
husband was
your
black.
kids are black, your
Mhm.
church was black. So when you married a white man, it sounds like you're saying you were more idealistic about.
I was.
Yeah.
I was more idealistic about love. I was younger. And fortunately, we've survived it. Another interesting challenge that we had is that my husband adopted, and he and his first wife adopted a black child.
And his first wife is white?
His first wife is white. Well, she's actually a second wife, but anyway, she's white. She's passed on now. And they were raising a little black child. And when I came into her life, she was 8 years old. So that was a big challenge, me becoming her stepmother and me taking an active role in her life. I'm happy to report that we have a wonderful relationship, but it wasn't always easy because I had some very definitive ideas about how to raise a little black girl.
Yeah, I bet you did. But again, interesting that being in that relationship exposes you to a different understanding of whiteness. And a lot of times when we hear about that within the context of an interracial relationship or intercultural, because I do think we have one race, which is human. We usually hear about the prejudice and discrimination of people from the outside or people's families, not so much you being on the inside and having a different understanding of the white way.
Yeah, the white gaze, as Toni Morrison would call it. So what I found was, first of all, we made a commitment to love and respect and honor each other. So that was the foundation. Then when we'd run into these situations where we had very strong differences of opinion that were racially centered, he couldn't see his bias. He couldn't even see his whiteness. And we would talk it out and work it out. And that's what has always given me this sense of optimism. He comes from a middle-class white family. Both of his parents are PhDs from Minnesota. I come from the projects in the Bronx. I had teenage parents. I'm the firstborn. My mom was 18. My father was 19. Our backgrounds are very different. My grandparents came from the Caribbean. Our backgrounds are very different, but our politics is the same. And that's when I felt like this country has hope. There are things we can work, but we've got to address them. And remaining silent on these issues and having unnamed whiteness be all around us, in my mind, really weakens the progressive movement. And that's why I continue to do this, because I do want to see this country change. I think that we have all of the ingredients. We have the right ingredients for the recipe to make it work, but the ingredients are not laid out. There's too much unspoken and too much goes unaddressed. And so I go to all kinds of progressive events, and you'll see we're in separate, it's like all the black kids in the cafeteria sitting together, and white kids don't understand why.
Yeah, well, and we've been having some conversation on and off the air about the rise of this sort of democratic socialist model within the Democratic Party. I've always considered myself a democratic socialist long before Bernie Sanders. You just couldn't say it because they would put you in media jail. But what I've also noticed, and Tavis has talked about this too on his show, is that there seems to be a calculus with some of these DSA folks that they can win without black people, that they can lead without black people, that they, and whether or not they know it or not, that's the part of the question I hadn't really considered that you just brought up today. But I mean, I even see that in the mayor's race here in LA. Nithya Raman was booked on this show right before the primary, and then she canceled. What did her campaign people tell me? She doesn't have time. Now, if I was KFI or, some white station, they would have said her mom's in the hospital or, she's having a baby or something. They wouldn't have said she doesn't have time, because to me that translates as we don't need black people. So that issue of the unspoken racial agreements, even within the progressive movement, is really something that has to be addressed right now at this political moment that we're in.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you brought up Tavis. Maybe 15 years ago, Tavis spoke at an event at the California African American. It was actually during the time when Barack Obama was running. And Tavis said, as the black vote goes, so does the Democratic Party, and that's where you'll find the win. And I'd never heard it quite phrased that way, and I began to pay attention. And I looked at every single presidential race dating back to Eisenhower, and what Tavis said is true. And I believe that white progressives underestimate the need for us to come together. The divisions that exist are along this socially constructed thing that we call race. Well, it was constructed that way for a reason. And the reason is because it provides almost a permanent system of division that weakens those of us who want to come up against power.
Sharon Kyle is my guest, and you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
Listen up, KBLA delegation. We have something you need to hear. Right now, you may qualify for low-cost home internet. And we're not talking about a catch. This is real. Many internet service providers offer low-cost internet plans if anyone in your household is enrolled in CalFresh, Medi-Cal, SSI, or is income eligible. There are a lot of families in our community who deserve to be connected. Here's all you do. Call 844-461-7893. That's the Get Connected call center. Real people ready to help you enroll today. Or go online to internetforallnow.org to find a provider near you. You may also qualify for a low-cost computer through Human IT. Connectivity is not a luxury. In 2026, it's a necessity. And you deserve access just like everybody else. Call 844-461-7893. That's 844-461-7893. KBLA's got you. If you missed any of this, you can always go to our website at KBLA1580.com. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 in partnership with the California Emerging Technology Fund, CETF.
Gas prices got you down. LADWP customers get a rebate of up to $4,000 when you buy a used electric or plug-in hybrid vehicle. Installing an EV charger at your home? Get a rebate for that too, up to $1,500. Visit ladwp.com/EV today and start saving. That's ladwp.com/EV.
Number 14. That's where Talkers Magazine ranked Tavis Smiley on their Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important talk radio hosts in America. Join Tavis weekdays, 9 a.m. to noon or 9 p.m. to midnight, only on KBLA Talk 1580.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds.
Learning new things comes with age.
My mom? She started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive, KBLA Talk 1580.
It's a Think Tank Thursday, and if you want to get your collective brains in motion, laprogressive.com is a good place to start. Sharon Kyle is the editor. She is here with me. And this article that she's written is really our Think Tank Thursday assignment, which is how do we, you've said we were talking about in the context of the progressive movement, how do we, whether it's in the progressive movement or mainstream spaces or racist spaces, start to move the conversation to where we're at least acknowledging the realities of these unspoken arrangements, deals. White is the default, that's the normal, that is not race, and everything else is race. So therefore you're playing the race card. White people can never be playing the race card because they're the neutral.
They're the neutral, they're the non-racial people. So I think the way that we begin to get on this journey, which is a journey that actually began 400 years ago, is that we have to accept that until we place in the center this construction called race, it was placed in the center in order to dismantle all of our power. The power of poor white people, the power of Mexicans and people that have come up through the South, and people, all of our power is weakened. One of my favorite writers and thinkers on this topic was Lonnie Quinnia, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. But she wrote a book with Gerald Torres called The Miner's Canary: Enlisting Race, Resisting Power, Transforming Democracy. And in her book, what she argues is that racial injustice is not merely a problem suffered by racial minorities. It is an early warning sign that the entire democratic system is unhealthy and will eventually affect everyone. So like a canary in the coal mine, if the canary gets ill or faints, everybody knows we're in a toxic environment and it's going to eventually affect everyone. And I think that if we are being honest with ourselves and we look at this current administration and what they're saying the quiet parts out loud, we can see that what they're doing is affecting the entire nation. Everybody's gas prices are up. Everybody is trying to live through this affordability crisis. But it starts out by first attacking the racial minorities, and then it spreads.
So well said. Let's go to Kwamel calling us from Gardena. Good morning, Kwamel.
Hey, gang. I'll be as brief as possible in this unpack. I've encountered over the years, hopefully it's not off topic, but I wanted to throw this at both of you, where a lot of black, usually kind of men, usually online, throw this idea that that being conservative or being liberal or progressive is somehow, and I can infer this from how they talk, like it's inherently white. And I wanted to get your take on whether there's an idea of a politics for us, or like we're just totally off the spectrum, and we really can be that our politics are just black, or are these men, sometimes women, being delusional and need to get their political education up? I'll take your comments off the air. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for the question. I have explored those ideas myself. The fact is, in California, especially in Southern California, black people represent about 7 to 8% of the population. I don't think that there's very much that we can accomplish by ourselves. And that's why it's so important to me that we have a united, racially united and ethnically united progressive movement. That's where our power lies. 7% of the population. To me, that's just a non-answer.
I mean, we can do stuff for our own communities, right? We can organize locally, and I do think that's important. But I agree with Paul in the chat. He says black progressivism is different from other progressivism, just like black conservatism is different. And I feel like we need to exert our influence more broadly, because we may be 7 or 8% of the population, but we're about 80% of the music folks like, right? We're about 70% of the fashion folks like. So the question becomes, are we exerting our influence in progressive spaces the way that we should and could? And I'm challenging us to do it right now because of the rise of the DSA and other people calling themselves socialists or progressives who conveniently have huge blind spots around race.
They have huge blind spots around race, and I think that they intentionally avoid discussing race.
Really?
I'm beginning to see that perhaps their political consultants are advising them.
Who are
like,
probably
that's the third
all
rail.
white.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the third rail. Don't address it. That's the
Right.
third rail. Just see what you can accomplish by, like, I heard a very intellectually nourishing conversation between Naomi Klein and Ezra Klein. And these are really smart people. And Ezra has a great podcast, but he's just absolutely racially blind. And I wrote about this. They talked about the conditions that we find ourselves in this country, the social conditions and so on, but they never bring up race. And I wrote about it. I found out the next week he had Brian Stevenson on.
Well, see, there you go. Flexing your influence.
Yes.
We got a minute left here. Sharon Kyle, what do you want to leave us with this morning?
I want to leave us with the knowledge that race is a social construct that was constructed for a reason. Our problems are not left versus right. Our problems are top versus bottom. And the top versus bottom issue is going to hit us all, every single one of us.
Absolutely. And you're, aside from laprogressive.com, where they can sign up, I know you're on Twitter. I see you tweeting.
Yeah, we're on all the platforms. We're on Blue Sky, we're on Facebook, all of them, TikTok.
Under LA Progressive.
Under LA Progressive, at LA Progressive.
Thank you for coming in. It's so wonderful to talk with you.
Same here, Dominique. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, today is just like that. Michael McCarty joins us next. He is a member of the Black Panther Party and a world-renowned storyteller. We got a lot to talk about. KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Protests continue in Madison, Wisconsin after a police shooting captured on viral video. Authorities say the suspect